Hi there, Layla at Process Driven here, and today I want to talk through the settings of Zoom because when I talk about the settings of Zoom, I call it a labyrinth because it is such a maze to try to find your way through. There are so many words, none of which have definitions or helpful tips. It's just a very confusing settings area. And because there are so many layers and different twists and turns to the settings, I thought, why not just make a video walking through what each area means and also how you can orient yourself and how you can get yourself set up to at least get your Zoom account working correctly, if not having it perfectly perfected on the first pass. So today I'm going to be focusing on the personal settings that you see right here. I am in the personal settings. I'm not going to be focusing on the admin kind of bigger account, the big account users here. So just someone who has a Zoom account on a individual level. We're going to be focusing on those individual settings today. So whether you have the free account or the paid account, the settings can be more or less the same. There's going to be certain things that might not be available to you. I am doing this tour here for Zoom US. So again, your settings might be different in different countries. And just to orient yourself of where we are so you can follow along, I am in Zoom. I've clicked on the profile up here in the top right and I've opened profile settings. And I'm going to scroll down until I hit settings and click on that. And that's where we're at. Just to refresh it here. So open up your Zoom account. You can follow along if you have two screens. If not, just keep this video paused and go through it with us. But before I dive in, let me just explain this talking head here because we're going to be talking for a while today. My name is Layla and I run Process Driven. I work one-on-one with small teams to set up the right cloud software for their operations. So that is everything from video conferencing to task management to appointment scheduling, all the little pieces of technology little businesses need to grow. I help people work with, set up, and learn how to use. So today, I'm just going to be doing a free Zoom kind of walking through each setting because with COVID-19, everyone needs to have their Zoom account set up and set up properly. So why not just go through each setting and at least try to translate what some of this stuff means? So without further ado, let's begin. So let's just orient ourselves here. Again, we are in under the personal section and settings. So if you have a kind of an admin account and you have multiple people in your account and you're trying to orient all that, this is not your video. I'm just going to be focusing on personal settings today. So once we are in here in the personal settings, we see tons and tons and tons and tons of words. Let's go through those first. These first three tabs are just different layers of settings, three different categories of settings that you can flip through. They are completely different as you flip from each page. Here, on the other hand, right beneath it, are kind of a quick scroll. So if I click on schedule meeting, it'll take me right there. If I click on in meeting basic, it'll take me right there. It's kind of a way for you to navigate through like a table of contents. This can be confusing for some people. Again, we've got meeting settings, recording settings, and telephone settings. So there are three layers here. We're going to go through every single one and do the best we can here. So as we go, I'm going to explain what each field means and whether I recommend you have it on or off as a beginner in a Zoom account. I will say this is just my opinion. This is just what I consider best practice. Think about it for your own business. Think about your use case and make the right decision for you. All right, so the first field here, we are into scheduling meetings. Boop, boop, boop. First field is host video. Now this one is pretty straightforward. You as the person hosting the meeting, do you want your video camera on by automatically or do you want it off and then you turn it on when you're ready? Do you want to have to click a button to turn your video on or not? For me, I recommend keeping this off because why not just be safe? I'm always going to remember to turn the video on if I want it on, but since I also do non-video meetings, I'm going to keep that off. The next one is participants video, the guests in your meeting. Do you want their video automatically on? This one I highly recommend you turn off if you ever do non-video meetings or if you're working with people who aren't used to video meetings because having someone join a meeting and all of a sudden their face be on display can be terrifying. So I usually keep that off and then use that as a moment to explain to my guests, hi, if you'd like to join me with your camera on, click the camera button, that kind of thing. But again, you can turn these on if you think it's right for you. Audio type. Okay, here we go. So this is the way people can talk into the meeting. How do you want them to be able to talk? Most of the time, people are going to use computer audio when they're joining a meeting. And that basically means they're on their laptop, they plug in their headphones to the laptop, and that's how they join the call. They just have their headphones in, based into the computer. That's what I have more or less right now. I have my computer, have this microphone plugged into the computer. I'm using computer audio to record right now. You can also have telephone audio, which basically means someone could have their phone and dial into a phone number, which can be nice if they have cell service, but perhaps not strong internet. By default, I would keep both of these on if you have any question about it. One thing I will say, and you'll see it up here at the top, right now I'm making this video during the COVID-19 crisis. Zoom does not allow that phone call to work, the dial-in stuff to work for free accounts at this time because of the crisis. So if you really need that phone number, even if you turn it on here, it will not work unless you have a paid plan during this crazy crisis. Normally, a free plan would still be able to get a telephone number. In this case, not. So the next step is join before host. And this is basically the setting that allows people to join your Zoom meeting, join your video meeting before you yourself, the host, join. I pretty much always recommend having this off. There are some unique instances where you might want to allow people to jump in. Perhaps someone who's not you is actually running the meeting and you want them in there early to get ready. But otherwise, I would say keep this off because this could be troublesome of people basically hijacking your meeting location by joining before you and doing some terrible or funny, depending on your perspective, things. So I would keep that off. When you have this off, just to give you kind of a description, if I were to have a meeting and you were to have to join it, you would use a link to try to join the call. When you try to join before I was there, you would get a message saying, "We're still waiting for the host to start this meeting. Check back soon," or "You'll be transported to the meeting room when it's ready," that kind of thing. So again, I would recommend keeping that off. Next, personal meeting room ID. I have a whole separate video on my thoughts about personal meeting room. But for me, I do like to use it. And you can, again, watch that other video for the full thoughts here. But the personal meeting room ID is your personal link for meetings, and it's the same every time. The reason I like to use it is because it takes the guesswork out of scheduling meetings. It basically says, it lets me know that every time I schedule a meeting, I go to the same link. Because otherwise, the system will generate a unique link for every meeting you schedule, which is great. It's very secure, right? There's always a different link. So it's basically like generating a new password each time. But I would get confused. Which link am I going to? And someone would call me and be like, "Hey, I can't get into our meeting later today. Could you send me the link?" And I might send them the wrong one. So I like to get rid of that guesswork by using the personal meeting room for all meetings. Likewise for instant meetings. Da-da-da. Okay, got it. So these two settings. So scheduling a meeting basically means when you put a meeting on the calendar that's not right now. And an instant meeting is basically just a meeting that happens immediately. If I were to say start a meeting right now, that would be an instant meeting. So moving down here. All right. And these two settings I did conflicted. So these two password options right here, it's asking you whether you want to have people fill in a password in order to join your meetings. So I turn both of these off. And then you're like, "Whoa, Layla, that's really insecure." Don't worry, we'll settle that up later on in this process. So do I want a password for scheduling new meetings? No. Do I want a password for instant meetings? No. Do I want a password for personal meeting room ID? No. You're going to turn all of those off. Embed password in meeting link for one-click join. Yes, you can do that. Require password for participants joining by phone. No. Just to explain what this one looks like, it's them having to type in this really long code into their phone in order to join your meeting. Really unpleasant process. I would always recommend turning that off because it's just a pain in the butt. Mute participants upon entry. This is a really fun one. So if you find yourself doing group meetings, I would consider turning this on. If I'm doing a lot of one-on-one or one-on-two stuff, I would probably keep this setting off. But basically, it means just like the video, when someone joins our meeting, is their microphone automatically on? I would keep it on for me because I'm dealing with usually people who may not be the most comfortable with technology, and that's just one more thing to have to explain. And people are usually used to it. But if you're doing a big conference call or a big meeting, you might want to have this on so everyone comes in and they're automatically muted. For now, I'm going to keep it off. All right, upcoming meeting reminder. I don't turn this on because I use my calendar for my meeting reminders. I don't need Zoom yelling at me too. And if you just turn that off. All right, in meeting, we made it to section 2. This section is all about the stuff that you can do when you're actually, you guessed it, in a meeting. These are the basic settings, meaning stuff that is kind of fundamental. So I'm not going to pretend I understand what the encryption piece is, so I generally just keep it off. Chat. So chat is basically an in-room chat box in Zoom. It allows people to text back and forth in the meeting. I usually keep that on. I do not prevent people from saving chat. If you're, for some reason, doing something that you want more security in the little chat feature, you can turn that off. But again, I would just leave it on. You'll see a little chat box when you're in your meeting that reminds you that it's on. Private chat. Basically, there's this chat box. By default, it'll say send to everybody. But if you want to allow people to send one-on-one messages, turn this on. Again, I would keep it on. Most likely, you'll almost never use it, but it's nice to have it on just in case. Auto-saving chats. Now, this is something that if you are doing seminars or if you are doing something where people are typing information that's important in the chat box, you might want to have this auto-save. So auto-saving chat means whatever stuff's happening in that comments thread, it'll automatically save and send to you after the meeting so you have those for your records. By default, I'm going to keep that off. For most of my meetings, my chat is usually just senseless stuff like, I can't hear you, turn on your sound, or something like that. Play sound when participants join or leave. So I turn this on, but here's the but. Heard by host only is how I set this up. So basically, when someone logs into the meeting, I'll hear like a boop boop. Someone's joining the meeting. That's nice to know because, who is it? Why are they here? Is it someone I've been waiting on? It's nice to be able to hear that. Just hear that someone's changing. Change it basically notifies you of who's in the room, which I find really nice, especially if it's audio only and I'm not looking at my computer to see the participants. It's nice to be able to hear that alert. But I find it very disruptive when it tells everybody all the time, especially if you have a big group, boop, 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 boop. Everyone's coming in and out. I like to change it to host only so only I can hear who is in the group. This checkbox, I will say, that it's very tempting to have this record and play their own voice when they join, but it's kind of awkward. Basically, what happens is if you turn this on, someone will join the meeting and an automated voice will tell them, say your name to announce yourself or something like that. And they'll say, Layla. And then as soon as someone joins, you'll hear a really loud message that says, Layla is here or something like that. And it's just awkward. And I usually just keep it off for that reason. So there we go. Those are some changes. File transfer. I like keeping this on. What this means is in the chat box, people can also send images or files. If you are concerned about people like hacking into the system, then maybe you don't want to turn this on. Or if you are doing something to a really big group, again, you might want to keep this off. You can limit it to certain file types, but for now, we're not going to worry about it. Okay. Feedback to Zoom basically says, do you want to tell Zoom about how good the call was? I usually turn this off because I don't really care. And I mean, sorry, Zoom, love ya, but I don't really want my guests to be bothered by having to give feedback for Zoom after every meeting. What this does is if we turn it on after the meeting ends, people will be taken to a window to say, can you rate the quality of your call? You can turn it on if you feel like being a good Samaritan, I guess. It's good karma. But I'm going to keep that off. All right, end of meeting experience survey. I'm sorry. This is more so the kind of feedback to let you know how things went. Let's turn these both on so you can see what I'm talking about. Turn on, turn on, turn on. So again, these are the kind of the two layers of giving feedback to Zoom on how things went. I'm going to keep them both off because it's just extra complication. Are you seeing why I say these settings are a labyrinth? All right, next one's allow host to put attendee on hold. Basically, kick someone out of your meeting just temporarily because maybe you need to sort something out. I would turn this off unless you felt very comfortable using Zoom settings. Putting people on hold, I mean, it's kind of, I want to say it's advanced, but it's kind of a lot of maneuvering. So I think for most people, you don't need to turn that on. Allow meeting control or always show meeting control toolbar. Toolbar. Wow. Okay. This we want to turn on. I'm wondering if it gives me, nope, it's not going to show me any kind of picture. This is what I'm saying, Zoom. Come on, give us some images or something. But what the meeting control toolbar looks like is basically the bottom bar. I'm sorry, I'm using the word in the word, but it's a settings bar on the bottom of your Zoom window that shows you things like share screen, turn off video, mute yourself. Normally, it kind of just like your kind of clock and your navigation, your start bar on Windows, you know how that kind of fades away, and then if you hover down to it, it'll pop up with information. That's how normally the toolbar works in meetings, where when you're kind of scrolling to the bottom, it'll pop up and show you all the settings. But when you scroll away, it'll kind of hide. I would suggest turning this on, especially as a new Zoom user, so those settings are always available because those settings are important and it'll help you figure out where they are. Okay, show Zoom windows during screen share. This I would recommend turning on. Screen sharing, I would allow to turn on, although I would be very careful about the subsettings of this one. So, there's been some talk about Zoom hijacking, especially because, everyone's pretty much using it. If you are dealing with a large group of people, I would recommend that you block screen sharing from your participants. So host only if you are doing a big group. If you are doing one-on-one, different thing. But if you have a big group, if you're doing a webinar, bunch of webinars and stuff, you probably don't want your participants to be able to share their screen because there's been some funny or bad stories of people sharing inappropriate things on webinars, which can be bad. But for now, assuming this fake account is going to be just doing one-on-one meetings, I would keep it as all participants. I personally, because I need my clients to share their screen too, I keep it on all participants. So who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? This is another important one. Make sure this is always host only. You do not want your participants to be able to hijack the shared screen from you. Just as a quick definition here, screen sharing is when what I'm doing right now is screen sharing, showing you what's on my screen. But yes, keep this on host only. And if you're doing one-on-one, keep all participants. If not, keep it as just you or turn it off altogether. All right. Okay. So this next one is kind of an advanced question about screen sharing. So I told you right now I'm using screen sharing, but what I'm sharing is only one window on Zoom. Desktop sharing is different. Desktop sharing means I'm sharing everything that my computer screen has on it. So I could have 5 different tabs open and you would see all of them. By turning this on, you enable someone to share their entire screen, their entire desktop, not just one application. So just to compound on that a little bit more, I am sharing the Chrome application on my computer right now. If I turn this on, I could also share, the files on my desktop, what I have going on in File Explorer, etc. If, again, you're doing one-on-one stuff and you need to be able to share all of the things going on your screen, I would recommend turning this on. I would just recommend turning that on if that's the way you're going. If, again, you're just doing webinars and stuff, I would maybe turn that off. All right. Annotation. I feel like this is kind of an overdone tool, but I think you might have seen over at the beginning, I had a little button over here. Basically, annotation is when someone can mark up a screen, sort of like a whiteboard or kind of as a pointer. I would recommend turning it off. It's kind of overdone. Whiteboard, similarly, I would recommend turning off. It's not a very good whiteboard in my opinion, but it's basically where you can create a whiteboard virtually and write things. Best if you have maybe a pen and a touchscreen, but nonetheless, I would recommend turning that off. Nonverbal feedback. This is kind of fun. So you can turn this on in a meeting, and what it does is allow people to provide feedback, like thumbs up, thumbs down, heart, star, different stuff to kind of give feedback on things during the meeting without actually talking or chatting. So you can turn that on if you want to. If you're doing just one-on-one meetings, you do not need that on. So here's another weird setting that's just kind of snuck in here, but very important. Allow removed participants to rejoin. So in a meeting, you can have a lot of participants, and they all show up in your participants window. And as the host, you can kick people out. Either you can kick people out or they can leave or whatever. This setting allows someone who left a meeting to rejoin. If you are doing one-on-one meetings, if you're using this as a client communication tool, I would always recommend turning this on. So that way, if someone's glitching up and you need to remove them from a meeting, you're not blocking them from ever joining that meeting again. If you are doing big webinars and you only remove people if they're being really spammy, then maybe you want to keep this off and keep those people from rejoining. For now, I'm going to assume this is kind of used for a small business, and I'm going to keep that on. All right, the advanced settings. Here we go. I need a sip of coffee here. Okay, so advanced settings in Zoom. We have reached phase 2, and let's just get to it. So breakout rooms. Breakout rooms, I think, are a very underutilized Zoom feature, which is just so cool. If you are doing group meetings, if you are doing one-on-one meetings only, breakout rooms is pretty much pointless for you. What breakout rooms does, as it suggests here, is when you have a big group of participants, let's say you have 10 people on your Zoom call. When you click the breakout rooms button, which is only visible once you toggle this on, becomes a meeting control on the bottom. When you turn this on, you'll see this kind of like four square looking icon. When you click it, it'll prompt you to split up participants into mini Zoom rooms that you can send messages to, and then you can kind of make them all come back together. But that's what the breakout rooms does. It allows people to break out into small groups. So if you are someone who is a presenter, and normally in-person presentations, you do something like, now turn to your table, turn to your table, or turn to your partner and discuss this. Well, virtually, it's hard to do that in a Zoom meeting because you can't have people talking at the same time. By using breakout rooms, you could split a group of 10 into, 5 groups of 2. I don't know if you can go that small. Let's say 3 groups of whatever that would be, 3, and 4, and allow small groups of people to take off their mute, to turn on their video and actually talk to each other about what you've been presenting. I think breakout rooms are really fun, but again, if we're assuming this is a small business doing things one-on-one with clients, we can keep this off. If you're doing a group presentation, you might want to turn this on. So next, there's a subsetting here about assigning people to breakout rooms. If you're turning this on, definitely keep that checked just so you have the option. It doesn't harm anything. It's not much worse. It just gives you an extra option, which I think is valuable. Remote support. Okay, so this is basically allowing you to one-on-one help if you are in a group setting, once again, and one person is really struggling getting their Zoom stuff set up. You can turn this on to allow some one-on-one remote support. Basically, it works like a breakout room. There you go. Since we are considering this, again, a small business, not going to worry about that. Closed captioning. So this is subtitles, more or less. If you wanted to add subtitles to your call, if perhaps that's something that's a requirement for your organization, you turn that on here. Likewise, you could turn on the save. Both of these we're not going to do because assuming this is a small business and we don't need to turn on captions. Skipping those two. This is kind of fun. Allowing other users to take control of your camera during a meeting. Again, I'm going to assume to turn this off, but it's something to play with if you have a need for that. If you need, maybe you have a camera that you're able to move around or adjust, you want to allow someone else to do that. Virtual backgrounds. This is a fun one. Basically, it helps you turn your background into a green screen. If you want to turn this on for fun, awesome. If not, no. I think by default, I would actually turn this off just because if someone turns on a virtual background, it can be very distracting and glitchy. So I'm going to keep that off. But honestly, between you and me, I'd turn it on and just play with it. Just for fun for yourself, and then turn it off for everyone else. All right, next one. Identify guest participants. So, basically it shows who's a guest and who's not. If you're someone that maybe you have a panel, or maybe it's like you and a whole team working with clients and you want to be able to differentiate who's part of the company and who's not, maybe you want to turn this on. Small business, I would keep this off. Auto answer group chat. So we mentioned there's a little chat window. If you are moderating a meeting by yourself, it could be hard to host a meeting and also maintain the chat. So you might want to turn on auto reply. Again, small meeting or small business use case, I would imagine keeping this off. All righty. So only show default email when sending email invites. This is kind of a weird setting. In Zoom, there is an option to send an invite. And basically what that is it's a templated message that you can copy that says, hey, you've been invited to a Zoom meeting. Here's the link to join. Here's the link to call in, blah, 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 blah. Just a generic invitation. And when you're in a meeting and you go to invite somebody to that meeting that you're already in, it prompts you to send that as an email. And it gives you 2 choices as to kind of how do you want to send it? Do you want to just copy and paste it? Do you want to use your default email provider, so Outlook or Gmail, or do you want to do something else? I don't know why. It's kind of interesting that they would even have this on here. I would just keep that off. You're smart enough to figure out how to use copy and paste. Use HTML format email for Outlook plugin. So this is just different ways of formatting those email notifications. I would just keep that off for now. Allow users to select stereo audio in their client settings. Again, more settings are more confusion. Unless you run into an issue with people having issues with audio coming in, I would just keep that off. Allow users to select original sound for their client settings. I actually haven't played this one, people. Original sound in their client settings. To select an original sound, I actually don't know what this one is. Man, I'm sorry, guys. I thought I went through all these. But this one I have not played with yet. And of course, there's no useful description, so this is anyone's guess. I will play with this a little bit and post an update about it. But I use select original sound in their client settings. I actually don't know, man. Sorry, guys. We're gonna leave that. I'm gonna actually turn that on just so we can play with it a little bit. So that's that. What is that? What could that be? I'm trying to think. Original sound, maybe for someone coming in to a meeting. Anyone's guess. We'll leave that on there as a wild card. So attention tracking, this is kind of a weird thing. You can keep an eye on who has Zoom actually up on their screen, your participants, or who just has it like minimized and aren't really paying attention by turning this on. Again, one-on-one use case, not important. Webinar, this could be more important. Actually, turn that off too. Here we are finally on the setting that I think is so important and I don't understand why it's hidden under advanced. This is waiting room. So waiting room is kind of the fancy version of not letting someone join before the host. So I gave you the example before. It was an earlier setting where it said, allow participants to join before the host, and we turned that off. We want to make sure that we are in the room before anyone is able to join the meeting, just to make sure no one's like, I don't know, share screening with porn on the view or something like that. So this waiting room is an extra layer of security on that. Basically, before, if I keep this off, I join a meeting and you're trying to join me in the meeting. As soon as I'm there, you'll be able to join automatically. If I turn on waiting room, which again, I'm recommending that you do turn this on. Absolutely. If I turn on waiting room, I join the meeting. It takes about a second. And then I see a ping saying, John Doe's trying to join the meeting. Admit or decline, or I forget what the other word is. Reject. Probably not reject, something nicer like that. And so I can choose to admit you into the room or not. That's what the waiting room does. Rather than you automatically joining as soon as I'm there, this forces me to click accept or let in or whatever the word is. So keep that on. That is a really good safeguard for keeping people out of your meeting rooms. I mentioned before about the personal meeting room ID. That's a link that's always the same every time. Well, because it's the same every time, if someone were to find it or see it, they could join your meeting, crash a meeting that you have with somebody else. When you turn on waiting room, you'll see that the person who's not supposed to be in your meeting is trying to join, and you can then reject that person. Alrighty, next thing is join from your browser. This is basically allowing somebody to join a Zoom meeting without having the Zoom app downloaded on their computer or their device. I think it's nice to turn this on. It can be a little confusing because then people will see multiple options, but I think it's nice to turn it on. Here's a good example. This is a workaround for participants who are unable to download, install, or run applications. So some organizations, especially larger ones, have admin restrictions on what you can download to your computer. So having this join from your browser is really nice. Again, I recommend turning that on as with waiting room. Whew, we're almost there, people. When do we want to send email notifications? So this is an email alert going out that, things are happening with the meeting. Number one, when attendees join a meeting before a host. You're like, wait, Layla, we just turned off that option. They can't join before us. No, but they can try to join before us. So I would actually keep this on. What this does is it sends you an email when someone's trying to join your meeting room, but you are not there yet. What's nice is this can sometimes help you catch people who have like wires crossed. Maybe they think your meeting's at 10, but it's not till 11. If you get that notification saying John's waiting in your waiting room for your meeting, and your meeting isn't for an hour, you might want to reach out to John and make sure he knows when your meeting time is. So I recommend keeping that on. When a meeting is canceled, I would recommend turning that off because I assume you're using a digital calendar of some kind or a calendar to keep people straight. So if that's the case for you, I would turn that off. Alrighty, blur snapshot. So if you are using Task Switcher on iOS, Apple devices, and you don't want to have people see what's going on in the background, you can turn this on. Kind of a niche tool. I would just keep it off unless this specifically applies to you. Invitation email. This is kind of a fun setting that I don't think people often play with. You can actually edit and add some custom text to that invitation people get to join you in Zoom. So I mentioned before, you can send an invitation in all these different ways. You can add some personal things like need help, reach out to me directly at da-da-da. That's something I recommend adding, is actually customizing this template so people have a way to call you on the phone or text you if they're really stuck trying to get in your Zoom meeting. Because the default template invitation is just very sterile. So there's that. You can also change the language if you need to. Scheduling privilege. Would you like someone else to be able to schedule for you or vice versa? That's pretty much all that is. and the integration authentication. You can try to hack this, but sorry guys, I'm not. This isn't a real account. So those were all of these settings areas here in the regular meeting. Whew, that was a lot. We still have 2 more tabs, people, though, so hang on. These are short, though. Under recording, we are customizing the settings for how you can record a meeting should you choose to. If you wanted to record a one-on-one or group meeting, what are the settings? So basically, we've got a few options here. Local recording, meaning do you want to have a saved copy of this meeting on your computer, on your file explorer, in your Finder? Do you want to save it there? If so, turn this on. And do you want to allow participants to record as well with permission? Just by default, I would keep both of these on, just in case you should ever decide to record. The second one, though, is automatically record. Do you want to record every single meeting, no matter what? For most people, this is going to be a no, because you don't need that, and it's recording long video calls can be quite a lot of storage. If for some reason you need it for security reasons or for note-taking, or you just like watching yourself talk, you can turn that on. But I'm just going to recommend keeping it off. Just to show you some. And I will say right now, I'm in a free account. And so I'm only seeing the record to local computer settings. If you are on a paid account, you're going to see 2 options here. Record locally or record to the cloud. Record to the cloud is basically when you store files in the internet. You're storing them in Zoom rather than storing them in Finder, in your desktop, in your My Downloads, whatever. On a free account, you can only download locally. On the paid accounts, you could have things saved locally or save on the cloud, meaning you don't have to use up your own computer space. You can store them in Zoom, just like you would store a file in Drive or in Dropbox. Similar thing. Again, doesn't matter for us here because most likely we don't need to use recording. Recording disclaimer. This is one I really like to turn on. I'm alarmed that it's not on by default, but it basically tells people to give consent before you start recording them. I don't really understand why this isn't just always on, because, privacy. But I would keep both of these checkboxes on. And basically what it is when someone hits the record button, everyone has to say, yes, I'm okay with my information being recorded. And it also asks you to confirm that you, as the host, want to start the recording, because it's very easy to hit record by accident. So I like to leave all of those on. Should you decide to record, it prompts everybody to consent. Multiple audio notifications of recorded meeting. I would, if again, you're doing a lot of recording, you might want to turn this on. It basically notifies people that, hey, this is a recording meeting, even if they join late. I think it can be kind of distracting to keep hearing that. So I actually often turn that off. They do visually see a recording button when they join a Zoom meeting to let them know it's being recorded. It's a little red, blinking thing in the top corner. So that's the settings here. See, that one was painless. Next one is telephone. Again, this is a short section. The first step is show international numbers link on invitation email. So again, that invitation I keep referencing, there is a bunch of phone numbers that show up on it, and it's very confusing. So the shorthand of this question is, do you have calls with people who need to use phone dial-in and are outside of your country? If not, turn this off because it will get rid of a lot of confusion. If you are working internationally, turn it on. Just make sure you look at your own invitation to be clear on kind of how to explain all of the noise to people, because this shows a lot of different numbers. Toll call, you can't really adjust, just leave it as is. Mask phone number in the participants list. So basically, if people have their phone number that they're dialing in, if you want to hide their full phone number for their privacy, you can do that. I think this is nice, again, if you're doing a group meeting. If you're just meeting with one person, you can leave this off, because sometimes you need to know all the numbers to know who the heck it is. Dial-in regions, if you want to specify, like if you're constantly calling with people in Egypt, maybe you want to have that in here so Egypt people have that phone number written there. For a small business use case that's working locally, that doesn't matter. You can keep all these kind of off. So that is the main settings area of Zoom. The key pieces that are very important is the turning off join before host, using personal meeting room ID. Again, that's an opinion piece. People are going to argue with me on that one. That's okay. Always, always, always having that waiting room on or the password on if you're using personal meeting room, because otherwise you are opening yourself up to having anyone just join your personal meeting room. And yes, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to leave it at that for this. I'm sorry this was such a long video. There are a lot of settings in Zoom, and I hate to break it to you, but we only covered the main section. There are a whole lot more things that you can adjust both in the profile, under user management, under room management, under account management. A lot of different settings, but hopefully this gives you enough to at least get your account set up and operating. Once your account is set up in this way, you will only need to have one link for each meeting, which is your personal meeting room. You can share it with anybody using a calendar or just putting it as the location on an event, and anyone will be able to join. You will have that waiting room to be able to toggle people in and out to make sure you're not getting hijacked by any random people joining your meeting. And all in all, I feel like it is the most beginner-friendly setup of Zoom. Unfortunately, it does take a little bit to set up because there are just so many settings. But please, if you have questions about any of these things, leave a comment below. I will be happy to answer them or respond with kind of additional videos. I know I still owe you an answer on one of those questionnaires that I haven't played with of the unique sounds. But I'll get back to you on that one. If you happen to know what those unique sound speeds are, please leave a comment below. I would love to hear it. That is it for this video. If you'd like to see more walkthroughs, tutorials, just explanations of things like this, please do subscribe to the channel, like, follow, comment, do different things to show some love and help this video reach more viewers. And that is pretty much it for this one. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye.